Hello, my name is Shawna Young. I'm CEO of Camelback Ventures. I'm so excited to be here today leading our next 10 years, 10 voices conversations focused on the secret sauce of the Camelback Fellowship. Every year, we welcome innovative founders from around the country who are focused on education and technology, and we support them through our fellowship, a 4-month experience that is focused on the 5 C's: capital, coaching, connections, curriculum, and community. I'm excited about today's topic, building strong networks and partnerships for entrepreneurial success. And we have amazing 2 people with us who've really built a partnership with each other, starting with Leah Hernandez, our 2022 Camelback Fellow, part of Cohort 9, and the founder and CEO of Muse Incorporated, and Dr. Abby Hasberry, founder and CEO of Dear Abby Consulting, who's a longtime Camelback coach and supporter. Welcome, both of you, to our conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I'd love to start with a series of questions. And first is about just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, what inspired you to start your venture, and how you're connected to Camelback Ventures.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll kick us off. My name is Leah Hernandez. I'm based here in Atlanta, Georgia, originally from California. And as you mentioned earlier, I am the founder and CEO of Muse and Young Authors Publishing. I started my venture back in 2018, and it started with Young Authors Publishing, which helps children of color write and publish their own books. And royalties from their book sales go back to our young authors to help with their post-secondary plans. I did that for a number of years, and then we launched Muse, which is our adult imprint that publishes adult fiction and nonfiction written by Black authors. And since we've started the company across our children's and adult imprints, we've published a little over 55 books, all written by Black authors, and are really passionate about helping to diversify the publishing industry.
Thank you, Leah.
Hi, I'm Abby Hasberry. I am a coach with Camelback and have been with Camelback since about 2018, 2019. I started as a coach after being a founding principal of the school and recognized that all of my support was really either attached to my money or my evaluation, and it just didn't feel like real support. And so I decided that coaching was the thing that I wanted to do after that, to really give founders support that they could really confide in and be vulnerable in. And so I love this space. In addition, I'm also a therapist, and I work primarily with people in the adoption constellation. And so I do a lot of speaking, a lot of touring, and today we'll talk a little bit also about the book I wrote, my memoir, which is about adoption.
Thank
and
you.
I forgot to mention earlier, I'm a fellow, 2022 fellow, class 9, group number 9. And Dr. Abby was my coach, and she was the best coach ever, and really helped me through a really pivotal time of our company. And I was really grateful to have her and to have worked with her after the fellowship.
And you have a connection to her book being published, right?
Yes. So I have the absolute honor and privilege of publishing Adopting Privilege and working with Dr. Abby to help bring her book to life. She has an incredible and empowering story, and I'm so blessed to be able to be a part of her journey. And thank you again.
Well, thank you for sharing. As I shared at the beginning of this conversation, Camelback Ventures was started 10 years ago, really trying and focused on addressing the issue of limited early capital for leaders of color and for women who are starting their ventures in education and technology. We found that often without capital, without connections, without community, that it's really hard to be successful. So Leah, I have a question for you. How have you cultivated relationships with investors, mentors, partners to help you with your venture success and growth?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the simple answer is community and networks such as Camelback. In my early years, and even still to this day, I'm actively applying for fellowships and grants and cohorts, so that way I can get access to wonderful mentors such as Dr. Abby, and curriculum, so that way I can help get out of the weeds of the business and think a little bit more long term about what that looks like for us. Transparently speaking, I haven't done much in venture funding. I don't think that every venture needs VC funding, although there are so many different ways to get funding for your business. And so I've been really adamant about exploring other ways to get funding for the company. But I think the biggest thing that has helped me to grow to where we are today is the people within my network. And the way that I grow that is by applying for things like Camelback.
I appreciate that. And I want to hear from you also, Dr. Abby, about how you help our founders, which we call our fellows, really with finding networks and making connections to help grow their ventures.
Sure. So one of the biggest things that I say is that with every conversation, there should be an ask of who should I talk to next? And then will you do an introduction to me because that is how we build our networks, is really talking to people and really getting to know people, but really having those introductions that are personal, that are one-to-one. And so whether that is from your board members, from clients, from other accelerators, or where your coaches, wherever you are, making sure that that conversation continues on and saying, like, who do I talk to next? I think that's like the one biggest piece of advice that I can give to anyone in this space.
I really love that. And we recognize that the amount of venture funding, even philanthropic dollars that goes to Black-led or Black-founded entities and women and people of color, is very small. I think after the murder of George Floyd, as well as the Black Lives Matter movement, for the venture side, we broke over 1% of dollars going to us out of billions. And so now that the market has constricted, that number has gone down from 2024 to 0.4% of all venture dollars going to Black-led ventures. And when you look at women, that percentage is at 2%. And you look at philanthropic investments, it's like 2% for Black-led nonprofits. And so it's still very small. So my question to both of you is, what type of advice would you give to a new founder that feels overwhelmed and somewhat daunted by figuring out, one, how to frame and develop their venture and then build the resources to launch it?
Yeah, it's a solid question. I think my advice would be to do as much as you can before you go out and raise. I think traction is going to be the biggest advantage that any founder has, whether you decide to get VC funding or not. And I know we have big dreams and big visions, and trust me, I'm a gal who dreams very big too. And I think a lot of times we think that equates to money and needing money now in order to do that. But I think you'd be really surprised by how scrappy you can get and how you can show proof of concept before you ask anyone for $1. So that would be my biggest thing, is if you haven't had any traction yet, figure out how to do traction with the limited resources that you do have. And if you have limited traction and you're trying to figure out what the next step is, figure out who's in your network, back to Dr. Abby's point, who can connect you to the next person to help increase that traction.
Yeah, and I'd like to put an exclamation point next to the proof of concept. It's really making sure that you have proof that what you're doing works and that it's needed in the community. And so the more and more you can do of that, and whether that be in picture and video, in testimony, in survey, whatever you can do to have that kind of proof of concept is so, so important in order to really get that traction and get people to invest in what you're doing.
I really appreciate that and understand, looking at the applicant pool for Camelback Fellows now, often we're looking for someone to at least have an MVP and proven somewhat what their model is, which is different than when we first started. And I, as a social entrepreneur, same thing. It's very hard to get someone to buy in, especially when we think about communities of color, Black community. We have limited resources. And now we're asking communities with limited resources to overextend and extend out to support early ventures, which are riskier ventures. And so now we also know that there's resources you can use to get a proof of concept up that didn't cost as much as before. So how you might be able to use that. At Camelback, we have 2 rounds of fellowships each year, and we have this year a remarkable number of applicants. But over the years, we've served 180 fellows and distributed about $8 million that have given $365 million in follow-on funding, which is incredible. Leah, my question's for you. Would love to know from your perspective, why did you apply to Camelback, and how did the Fellowship help mold your entrepreneurship journey afterwards, after the fellowship?
Yeah, I'm going to be really real here. And the real answer is, at first it was the money. I was like, they give how much? And I was like, we need that. But then when I got accepted and I was a part of the fellowship, the things that I got outside of the money helped more than I think the dollars themselves. The connections that I was able to get from Dr. Abby's network, the coaching that I was able to get, the people that you had come and teach us different curriculum, how to increase our sales, like that knowledge and wisdom and information, I didn't know that I needed at the time, but really helped transform the business. And so I think going into it, it was very like, we need money to like continue to help build the traction. But then once I got in, I was like, there are so many things that I just did not know, and you don't know what you don't know. So I'm really grateful to have gotten that throughout the fellowship.
Thank you for being real.
Yeah.
Thank you for being real. And I agree. I think, often the data shows that we in our communities are overcoached sometimes, and not given what you need on top of really effective coaching, which is financial resources to make your idea happen. And so I appreciate for Camelback that we sit at this nice sweet spot that goes beyond an incubator that might give you 5,000 or 10,000, and not the larger investment of 100 to 200,000, but really help you ideate and curate an MVP that will allow you to get that next tranche of funding. So as you know, Leah, often our fellows will say we were their first kind of institutional check, a larger amount of dollars to help them. Dr. Abby, my next question is more for you. And what drew you into becoming a coach for Camelback for the fellowship? What's been most fulfilling about the experience? And also what's been some challenging about the experience?
So what drew me in was the mission, 100%, being able to serve people of color and women, and also to be able to do it as a contractor and a side partner. So again, I wasn't someone who was going to be tattling on any of my fellows and saying what they don't know or what they're not doing, but really being able to be a support in a place where they can be vulnerable. It was really important for me to find partners where I could really fulfill that space and fulfill my own personal mission in supporting in that way. And then what kept me here is the people. I mean, I've met the most incredible people. I tell people all the time that I meet the coolest people. I have the best job ever because of these founders who I get to support and meet. And it's an incredible honor to do so. And that has just kept me coming back. And I think seeing the relationships that just continue to grow over the years with the founders, and it's not like a one and done, but not only my relationship, but Camelback's relationship with the founders, and the fact that there's this after services. And so it's not you're in this fellowship and then you're gone. No, you're alumni and you just keep coming back, and Camelback continues to support the alumni. And that that makes me want to stay because of that support. I think the most challenging thing really has been trying to figure out the funding piece for some people. And it just is hard finding funding in this space. And now in this economy, it's even harder. And seeing bigger organizations and corporations now going after the same funding that our smaller founders were going after successfully. And now they're seeing these big names get the funding that they're not. I think that has been probably the most challenging thing in this space for me as a coach.
I definitely understand that. And with the construction that's happened and all the changes that have been going on, you also see, or we have heard of funders who are holding their current investments, their current founders, and making sure that they're successful. So that also makes it harder for newer ideas, newer founders to be able to start their ventures. I really love the relationship that the two of you all have, because it shows an example of what true mentorship, championship can look like, particularly within the Camelback Fellowship. The two of you have continued to work with each other, be in relationship with each other, and it's led to the venture we talked about at the beginning of the call, which is Dr. Abby, the release of your own memoir. So I'd love to talk a little bit about how that came to be, how you kind of unpacked and decided to work with each other, and what does that partnership look like now?
Sure, I guess I can start. So when I was originally writing, I was working with Leah and was saying, hey, I'm writing this thing. Do you have any advice? And we just talked a little bit about it. And in the space of publishing, I found that people wanted to change my voice, or I felt like I wasn't being heard or seen. And it was really frustrating. And for a couple of years, I would put it away and come back to it. And when I heard that Leah was opening Muse, I reached right back out and said, hey, I have this thing. It's pretty much done. Would you be willing to look at it? One, because I knew her well, I knew her organization very well, and that trust was there, and that feeling, that sense of security had already been developed, and it had been broken on my end with all these other agents and publishers along the way. And so it was kind of like coming to a place where I felt at peace with giving this big part of me in memoir, and just felt like I was in good hands with Leah.
Yeah, and I remember reaching out, or her reaching out, and I remember sending a list of like different agents and being like, there are so many other big publishers, and with more budget and more this and more that, and I'm like, I can connect you. And I remember, not to give too much away, but I remember you started to like move forward with a particular agent, and then I think we had a call, and you were like, I'm just like really not that happy. And I was like, well, I would really love the opportunity, like if you feel comfortable. And it kind of came to be. And I think the beautiful thing about this is it really was a partnership. And I'm very grateful that Dr. Abby was able to trust me with such a big part of her story. And it was really just really exciting to work on. One of the things that I wanted to focus on in launching the adult imprint is to not just create more books by Black authors, but create books that can actually change the trajectory of people's lives to, impact systems that need changing. And Dr. Abby's book did exactly that. So it's really been a joy to work alongside her and bring it to life.
I love that story. It really epitomizes what we want to see happen within Camelback, which goes beyond the experience within the fellowship. And I'm so excited to read your book, Dr. Abby. I'm really, really excited about that. I want to shift a little bit toward the moment of now. I've alluded to it throughout our conversation, but we know that we're in a unique moment in time. I feel like it's a historic moment in time. And often I think we get concerned about the changes that we see happening in front of us, notably so. And what I reflect on and share it with anyone who will listen is that as unnerving as it is to see these systems be unraveled, changed, go away, because we've learned how to work within them, around them, and through them, they were not equitable. I talked about the number of venture dollars that went to Black founders going above 1% down to 0.4%. It's all still bad, right? And the same with philanthropy. And so my question is, how are you think? So I actually think this is a moment for opportunity. I think there is often opportunity in change, opportunity in chaos. And if we have to be able to see it though, right? Like it's important to hold our communities and ensure that they are shored up as much as possible, but to recognize that these shifts with administration, with AI, with structures that are just changing or going away, actually might present multiple opportunities for our own communities. So my question is more related to how are you meeting this moment as an entrepreneur in your work and your personal life? Both of you.
Yeah, it's an important question to ask. And I think I agree with you in the sense of like, there is a lot of opportunity. And I think that if you're an entrepreneur, if you are a coach, if you're someone who wants to make an impact in this space, I think now more than ever, it's time to like really put our boots on and get to work. And I think that the way that you do that is through community. I think that the only way to create sustainable change is to work alongside others. I think the days of trying to be the lone wolf who attacks things on their own, like those days are gone. Like not only is it just really not going to get you where in the actual work, but I think it's so detrimental to your mental health, and it's not going to give you the sustainability to keep going. Like it's not going to give you the thing that you need to keep pressing on, because it will get hard. Believe me, it will. And so one of the ways that I've done that is by really bringing together, particularly Black people who work in the publishing industry, since that's my area. And so I recently hosted the Black Powerhouse Summit, which was a one-day virtual conference that brought together the entire ecosystem. So we had corporate publishers, indie publishers like myself, authors, bookstores, Black bookstores, librarians, book influencers, any and everyone who works in the ecosystem of putting a book out, selling that book, marketing that book, distributing that book. I brought us all in one room. We had about 180 people from around the world. So we had a lot of folks from the UK, some folks from Nigeria and Spain. And I think the biggest thing that we all walked away with is that we are not alone. I think this work can feel very lonely. But I think that's why we need safe spaces like Camelback and the summit that's coming up. And, you know, we need to be able to tap back into our community so that way we're not doing this alone. So that would be my biggest takeaway for how to respond to the moment now.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Just thinking about one of the things I tell people all the time is like there's enough for everyone to eat. We just have to figure out how to set the table. And so that really coming together and having community and working with people in collaboration and just feeling like you're not alone is super important. The other thing that I often tell people who are really worried about what's happening in the dismantling of systems is that these systems were never built for us anyway. And so the dismantling them isn't the worst thing in the world. It's us now coming together and figuring out how we want to replace them, and really coming in doing that work. And collaboration is the only way to do that. You can't do that in a silo. So it's us coming together as a community and really thinking about what works for us and what we need going forward. That's the conversation that we need to be in.
I love this. I love what both of you shared. One, Leah, please make sure we know when you have your next convening so we can be part of it, and shout it out to the Camelback community. And I agree with you, Dr. Abby, about these systems that we're not built for us in any way. And as we think about Camelback celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year for the fellowship in particular, I've been thinking about or talking with our team about how we can move and be the fellowship being more the staple of who we are, but not all of who we are. Really how we transition into being an institution that stands for equity in funding, in community, around entrepreneurship for entrepreneurs of color and women. And so that will look in like different things. So how we actually structure ourselves to have more capacities to support our coaches, our fellows, beyond the fellowship. How are we thought leaders in the space? And so supporting our mission means that you're supporting all those things. My question for you is, as you think about the 10 years ahead for your vision, your ventures and your vision, what does it look like? How is it relating to your broader vision for the world? And then also, as you think about Camelback 10 years from now, do you have anything in mind that would be top of mind for you?
I would say for my own personal vision, I think that I've done a lot in collaborating. I've done a lot in networking and coaching. What I haven't done much in yet is in policy. And so it's looking about how I can step into that space of policy. I have the connections now to do that. So now it's like, it's my responsibility. I've set myself up to that place. So now what does it look like for me to have some sort of influence on change in policy or some sort of influence in that area? So that would be my 10-year plan. For Camelback, wow, that's a really grand question. I love the idea of the supporting of just everyone within the ecosphere and of Camelback, and specifically like as coaches, I would love to see Camelback do more in supporting us as coaches, in our own collaboration with each other, but also even possibly in our work outside of Camelback. I feel like those two things in my life had not come together. It's Camelback and then my other life. And so I would love for those two things to kind of come together as well. And I think that I know that the coaches are dynamic and it just absolutely amazing people. And so getting to know more about who they are outside of the coaching too, and how they can serve Camelback and Camelback can serve us outside of just what we've been doing, I think would be great in the next few years.
Yeah. I love that. I love that you said policy. I definitely can see that for you. And I'm so grateful to know that you're stepping into that, because it's definitely something I've seen as a publisher in reading your book, and like knowing how many people who work in policy need to read and digest this to help reshape how we center adoptees. So love hearing that. 10 years. I feel like after last year, I'm like, baby, let's just make it 1 year at a time. But if I had to think long term, I'm really excited about the summit that we just recently did. We're going to make it in person next year. And so I would love to continue to make that bigger. So that way we can not just help the people who work in the publishing industry, but our authors, making sure that we're able to support them, connect Black authors, so that way they can share resources and tips, how they can grow their own career and how they can use their book to kind of help now policy making. And I think that a book can be a tool for so much. But I think, again, to Dr. Abby's point, a lot of us work siloed. And so I'm excited about bringing the community together. On the publishing side, I'm reluctant because I'm not gonna lie. This has been a year, so I'm like, do I want to keep doing this? But I think that now more than ever, we need Black-owned publishers, and so I'm excited to bring more indie publishers together and to help with distribution, because that's a huge barrier to entry for people in the industry. And for Camelback, what would I love to see? I think you guys do a really great job with helping fellows after the fellowship. And Dr. Abby does a great job of reminding me, like, you have office hours, like you can reach out, use your hours. But I would love to have maybe even like a separate program for people who have already went through the fellowship, kind of like a follow-up, like where are you now and how can we help you reach that next stage? Because as I mentioned earlier, the funding was great, but the coaching and thinking about the next 10 years is really important, but it's often hard for fellows and entrepreneurs because we're so in the weeds and the day-to-day. So I enjoy spaces where we can come out of that to think long-term.
I appreciate that. Thank you both for sharing. And the idea about supporting coaches is something that makes a lot of sense, as well as we continue to think about the arc of entrepreneurship. So how can we be there to support our entrepreneurs even beyond the 4 months? So I appreciate both ideas. Dr. Abby, before we start to wrap up, would love if you could delve a little bit more into your memoir, sharing a bit around some of the key aspects of what you wanted to be able to share through your writing and what you felt like you were able to accomplish.
Sure. So it is a memoir around adoption. I am an adoptee and specifically a transracial adoptee, which means that I was adopted into a family of white parents and white siblings. And so it's a lot about identity development. In addition, it's a review, a critique of the adoption industry, because in addition to being an adoptee, I was also a teenage mother who relinquished a child and was really a victim of coercion in that relinquishment. And so it's a critique of the adoption industry, not only as an adoptee and the trauma that adoptees all have, but also as a birth mother who's been through coercion. But even more than that, it really is, I want it to be a conversation starter. And so it's very vulnerable and very open, with a lot of reframing of how I've healed through it. It was really important to me when I wrote this memoir to write it from a healed place. I stopped writing in 2017 purposefully because I wanted to make sure that I had time to really write from a very healed place. And so there are things of the most recent past I haven't written about, because we need time to reflect and process. And so what I've seen is that it has been a conversation starter for many people who haven't had their own voice or haven't felt comfortable expressing what they've been through, or really some people who don't even recognize what they've been through. And it gives a name to the things that they've experienced and gives a place to start that healing process. And I hope that it is an education starter for those who are working with adoptees within the constellation, specifically with therapists and social workers and agency workers, to really think about adoption in a different lens from the traditional narrative of love is enough and you'll have a better life, because the truth is love isn't enough and it's not a better life, it's just a different life. And so it really is changing and shifting that traditional adoption narrative that is really there for marketing.
I appreciate you sharing that. As a person who's, I'll share personally explored adoption and gone through sort of part of the process, and recognizing how important it is to keep the relationship with the birth family, and really for the young person to be able to know who they are and form who they will be in a more expanded way. So I really appreciate your openness with your story. Thank you, Dr. Abby.
Thank you.
So as we start to wrap up, this has just been an incredible story. Getting to know each of you even more than I already knew you, and also hearing what you've accomplished, how you think about your work and your connection to Camelback, but also your vision for your work in the future is inspiring. I would like to end by just asking, are there any things that you'd like to share as we think about building partnerships and relationships, and any final thoughts you have to aspiring entrepreneurs as well as coaches who might see our broadcast?
Yeah, I guess to all of the entrepreneurs, my piece of advice would be to find your community. It's someone who recently has had hit kind of like a brick road and like, do I want to keep doing this thing? It was really my community that helped me kind of like pull myself out of the weeds and to remind myself of the importance of this work. And so I would say, if you don't have a community of people that not only are in the entrepreneurship space, but specifically in your industry and can understand the nuance of your industry, I would just encourage you to find that tribe, because it's going to be really helpful for the marathon and to keep going.
Yeah, and I would say that the two things that really stick with me is, if not me, then who? Ask yourself that question all the time. Like, why not you? Why shouldn't you do this thing? Why shouldn't you be in this space? And when you're in this space, really allowing yourself to take up space, giving yourself permission to really be in a space, take up space, and own that space that you're in, and have that confidence. And I think that that is the thing that we all need more of, is to really say, like, why can't I do this work? And if I'm going to do it, why can't I show up in my most authentic self and take up as much space as I need to take up in the world.
And how can people connect with each of you?
Sure. So for me, easiest way is adoptingprivilege.com, is my website for my book, but it also has all of the ways to connect with me on social media in it as well. So that's probably the easiest way.
Yeah, for me, I would say you can go to museinc.net to look at all of our books and all of our authors. That's where you can also purchase Dr. Abby's book. And for me, you can find me at Leah Danielle on Instagram and LinkedIn at Leah Hernandez.
And as we wrap up, you can stay connected with Camelback Ventures by going to our website at camelbackventures.org, subscribe to our newsletter, follow us on our social media at Camelback Ventures. So again, Dr. Abby, Leah, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing your time with us.
Of course, thanks for having us.